Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pinch of Salt, where we will be breaking down all 10 NACL teams in the 10 days leading up to the NACL regular season. We are on episode 8 right now, which means just 3 teams left to go, and maybe a bit of a premature unveiling of our defending NACL champions, according to you guys, the community. Some of you might be surprised to see this guys here this low, but we had them ranked as 3rd according to our Salty Runback community poll. Of course, they were 3rd in the regular season, Hawk, but then took off, won the split, and now have all 4 out of their 5 players on an LCS roster right now. The other one staying right put in the mid lane. But this is a team, Hawk, that many are excited about. Generated a lot of hype, of course, on social media, as a Toast team always does. Why don't we run down what exactly they're rocking with here in 2024?
Oh, and Grapes, are they rocking with some good players? Tenacity, Perry, Young, Manui, and Poom going to be rounding out the defending champion squad. Like you said, Grapes, 4 out of 5 going to LCS. And look, I mean, a good disguise is a good NACL. We saw how much this team did. We offered our open thank you note to Disguise Toast for their performance last split and what this team was able to bring. But let's remember as well, it was not all sunshine and rainbows throughout the entire split. They finished regular split 3rd, right? And had to turn it on in the playoffs. I think it's funny. I've seen some discourse on Twitter. People have been like, oh, you know, the undisputed dominance of DSG. And I'm like, I don't think you watched the same split as me. And Grapes, clearly people are thinking the same thing now. Because remember, this power ranking is for regular season. And DSG getting placed 3rd once again with a pretty star-studded lineup.
Yeah, I think I tweeted when this roster got leaked/announced that this is Cincinnati Thieves next, because it is 2 players from Fear from last year, and of course 3 other players, Tenacity, Young, and Poom, who have all been a part of the 100 Thieves Next team, whether it was Tenacity and Poom in 2020, and Young back in 2021, I believe is the correct correct year for that.
21.
Yeah. So all these players have been a part of some top tier play. You of course have 3 players, Tenacity, Young, and Poom, ironically, who have played in the LCS stage. Young, albeit for just a week, but Tenacity and Poom for maybe a little bit longer. So they have their experience. And Perry and Manui, of course, were 2 of those core players on Fear, which really surprised some people in both spring and summer. And when you take a look at all 5 of these players, Hawk, I think a very clear win condition comes to mind, which is one of my highlights here for DSG. If we play through top lane, I think things are going to go well. Manui established himself on Fear as maybe not the most, highly skilled mechanical AD carry in the league, because we had a lot of really strong ones, but somebody who was one of the best team players and was able to play weak side pretty well here in NACL. You remember things like the Seraphine ADC that he was able to pull out multiple times, able to stay put and become useful later on, and that really helped Fear in their regular season success specifically. And now when you have someone like Tenacity, who is one of the best laners and I think one of the best top laners that we're going to have here in the league this year, that's going to just create such a good win condition and such an easy formula for GSG to rack up those W's.
Yeah, a lot of hype surrounding Tenacity after an unceremonious end to his tenure on 100 Thieves. And I feel like criminally, it's actually Poom that has the most LCS experience on this roster, because Tenacity is a player that many people think should still be there and actually played toward. It's not the case, but now he's playing on DSG. Probably our highest profile. Not probably. It is our highest profile team here in the Challengers League, I think it's fair to say. And I agree with you, Grapes. I think Tenacity is going to be here to dominate. It's so great to see this player back in the space. And not only that, we talked about the minimal LCS experience of Young, but I think not only does this team have probably the best top laner in the league, I think they have the best solo lanes in the league. Young in the mid lane is going to be fantastic. We've talked a lot about the mid lane talent pool. There's been a lot of discourse surrounding that. Players like Messages and Toasty Alex, rookies getting their shot. This split, RJS coming out of retirement. I mean, some crazy mid lane moves, and it's Young who was one that stood above the rest last split after APA got promoted, and I expect to see nothing less this time around. Obviously, some of our import mid laners that we have yet to discuss could maybe have something to say about that, but I mean, Young, he's going to have some players to cut his teeth on, and assuming he's able to keep up with the import mids, I think the solo lanes of Disguise are going to be extremely, extremely strong, Grapes.
Man, I feel for Young, and I think this is a great storyline for him coming into 2024. If you remember back in 2021 when he was on 100 Thieves Next, every single player on that team in the summer split got a call to an academy organization. If you think of Gamsu, Chad, their bot lane, I think, kind of was Instinct and Busio. So all four of those players got called up to Tier 2 after their performance on 100 Thieves Next, except for Young. Going to 2023, DSG, Fake God, Tomio, Meech, and Zazel, all on LCS rosters. Young kind of still left behind, and I don't know if it's necessarily justified. We obviously had some imports come into the LCS in the mid lane in Dove and Mask, but if they weren't here and if other teams were looking to bring up a native mid laner, Young would have certainly been on the top of many of those lists. He's somebody who I think the biggest criticism of him right now is the laning phase and making sure that he's able to play correctly around the map in the early game. But if he is able to kind of clean that up, hopefully we'll have spot on an LCS team come 2025, because if you think about what happened with Young in 22 after he didn't get his shot, played on AoE in the summer, looked incredible all season, and of course got that call to Golden Guardians the next year.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a big prove it split for Young, right? I don't think it's criminal that he wasn't picked up for LCS or anything. I think I can understand the angle of the teams of, hey, maybe give this player another year, another split to develop. But if Young can do it in the NACL this year against players like Roamer and Quad, then I think it's going to be hard to ignore him. I almost feel like Perry, in a similar boat as well, had a fantastic year on Cincinnati Fear when, Grapes, I know our expectations were fairly measured for this player. And again, I think it's complete. Like, I don't think he was necessarily in line for an LCS spot, but if he can show up, especially playing around these really strong solo lanes, link up with Poom, make things happen for DSG, I think Perry is going to be another player that has a really strong claim as an up-and-coming rookie for the 2025 LCS season. So, yeah, both these players. I mean, I think this top side for DSG, their solo lanes, potentially the best in the entire league. Perry, I think, is going to be a great jungler to facilitate that. And it really just leaves this bottom lane, right? And the bottom lane is a bit of a concern. Like you said, Manui, not the strongest team, mechanical carry, but he is self-sufficient. And when you're talking about how good the top side of this map is and playing alongside an experienced support like Poom, as long as Manui and Poom are able to bring it in the 2v2, I feel like in the map play, I would expect DSG to bring it in their own right.
Yeah, Poom got such an early call up to the LCS. Like, you forget that he barely has had time kind of in this tier 2 system because he's so quickly moved basically straight from 100 Next to the LCS team back in 2020, even before somebody like Tenacity did. But even back then, he was somebody who was incredibly highly regarded, somebody who had really great mechanics, and I think now has a really good chance on Disguise to prove himself here alongside Manui if given the right opportunity. And I agree, the bot lane, not as, quote-unquote high profile, which I think is a little bit disrespectful to say for somebody like Manui and Poom. But everyone's probably looking
it's
at
relative
those solo
to the
lanes.
other bot lanes in this league, right? And that's the thing you got to remember, because the bot lanes are so strong.
And if they are able to bring it, I think the brand value that comes with this, guys, if they're able to perform very well, we saw 80% of their roster get picked up, and also their coach in Golden Glue. So, like this is definitely a spot and a team that'll get you the publicity and will get you looks from LCS orgs as a developmental hub, which I think is why it's so fun to see somebody like Young stick around and see somebody like Tenacity perhaps skip over his opportunity to play with an LCS affiliate to come here to Disguise just for that brand value, which is a very interesting point for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of chance for, I think, all these players potentially in line for LCS spots. But when you talk about how well this team is going to play together, Graves, I actually see you have a concern about how well they will play as a team. I feel like, similar to you, They have a clear game plan. Play towards this top side, and things are going to work. Leverage Manui's unique skill set and allow Poom to get unlocked on the map. But, of course, you got to make that happen, and potentially that's where your concern lies.
Yeah, I just remember with Disguise last year, it felt like the games that they were struggling, it felt like they just weren't all on the same page. Even though they had really good shot callers like Zazel and good, strong veteran leadership in Fake God, a lot of the time it seemed like a little bit disjointed play coming from Disguise in the summer, if I'm remembering correctly. And obviously they were able to clean that up going into the playoffs. But if that's the case for DSG this time around, you don't necessarily have the same immediate level of firepower in terms of just pure raw talent, where in the past maybe Disguise was able to just win games because Meech had a crazy game, or Zazel just brought every 1v9'd them to the finish line basically. While I do think this is a very talented DSG roster, this year compared to 2023 and in comparison to the rest of the league, you're maybe looking at not as strong top to bottom in terms of individual skill level, and I think going through those win conditions is going to be important. Making sure you're able to play as a team. I think Perry, a lot of this is going to have to come onto his shoulders as I think emerged as a big facilitator for Fear back in 2023. Because not necessarily level of player compared to last season even, but just because I think the league has improved, DSG aren't going to be able to just waltz through games based on just face rolling and skill checking people.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And I don't think there's any team that can really just face roll and skill check people. I mean, who knows, of course. But yeah, I would agree. Like the win condition is maybe slightly less straightforward for this team, so they do have to make sure that they can figure it out, play together. I mean, I think DSG has many of the tools to do it, but only time will tell. We're definitely looking at the top side of the map. But Graves, the question is, are we looking at the top end of the standings as well? Fan poll has them third. Just right, higher, or lower?
Oh, man. This is tough because now we know, as we are, just process of elimination, the next two teams up are our LCS affiliates, whether that's Team Liquid Challengers or FlyQuest Challengers. Do we think Disguised will be able to topple those squads? Obviously, they did in the playoffs of the summer split. I think I'm gonna say at least I think I'm gonna say a little bit higher. I think the win condition for this team is very clear, and they have, of course, those win conditions that we talked about, alongside some very experienced players who, again, have all been in this NA ecosystem, and I'm gonna give them that benefit of the doubt. Whereas on the other side with Fly and TL, maybe a little bit of hesitancy that could or could not be proven wrong or right, just based off of the name values that I have on some of those guys. So I'm gonna say a little bit higher on Disguised.
Very, very fair. I can see that. I feel like I'm going to actually say that I have Disguised as just right. I know on the last episode that I would have Supernova maybe a little bit higher, and perhaps they're the ones that would keep me with Disguised in third place. I think this team will definitely be a contender. I think they'll be at the top of the table. But for whatever reason, to me, I just think that we talked about having the same ceiling, and I'm not sure that this team's ceiling is all the way at the top. So I think they'll be in the mix, but I think third place feels just about right to me.
Very well. They were third place in the regular season in summer, so maybe that's the narrative that you can go. Either way, you'll be right, I guess, whether they're third or end up winning, taking the crown.
Yeah, very true. Well, if you think Disguise is just right, let us know at Salty Runback pod on all social media. And otherwise, take it with a pinch of salt. NACL action. Grapes, we are 3 days away. It starts on Saturday evening, immediately following the LCS on LCS_Challengers. Saturday, January 20th. You're not going to want to miss it, Grapes. We're going to have so much great stuff to talk about. But until then, I've been Hawk. That's been Grapes. We'll see you tomorrow for our second to last team.